Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. A little unorthodox start today, but hopefully you'll think it's worth the wait. Hopefully you will, because I did. I've been working real hard, among all the other things I have to get done, to actually. Did I make sure I record this thing? Yes, I did. To actually get the some real progress done on this Major Mace Mattingly thing. So I was all set to go for regular 6 o'clock. We started about an hour late today, and the reason is because just as I was rendering this puppy out, the PC crashed, and then Windows installed some updates, and then crashed again, and then they installed some more updates, and so on. And I was ready, about ready to have my aneurysm, but I decided no, I'm just going to delay the show for an hour. And in any event, I hope you think it's worth it, because I'm certainly of the opinion that it is. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and download this baby from the server. This was really, obviously, as always, more work than I thought, but I'm very, very pleased with this as a it's not even a test or a proof of concept. What I did this interview for was to do some backstory on these characters, but mainly I wanted to see if I could have, well, it's real simple actually. I mainly just wanted to see if I could tell a story, whether I was capable of doing that or not with this. I know we did the D is for Dungeon, but that did not have any lip sync, and lip sync is really tough. Right as I was about to get started on this, of course, Unreal Engine comes out with the new version of MetaHumans, and that took me a little while to get the hang of, but now that I do have the hang of it, it's going real crazy fast. So let me tell you what you're about to see here. First of all, let me just grab this thing, put it someplace where I can find it. There we go. Okay, you don't want to go there, you go there. Sorry, hang on a second. I just have to do that again. Won't take long. Yeah, I was going to tell you what I'm going to see here. It's actually longer than I thought it would be. It's about 7 or 8 minutes. But basically, it's a conversation. It's an interview. Now, there's a couple things about this I need to make crystal clear before everybody starts jumping on it. What you're about to see is it's edited. It's one of the things that took me a while, but it's nothing like finished. And what I mean by that is this: a couple of people pointed out to me, and I kind of knew this already, I guess, that it doesn't make any sense to have these guys in a soundstage studio because they're on the moon. So there's that. And the interview, the woman asking the questions, I pounded that thing out like in 20 minutes. So that character needs a lot of work. With all of this stuff said, understanding that the woman interviewer, I just threw that together. So the final version will be different from what you're about to see in the following ways. First of all, the interviewer will be much better. Secondly, there will be wide shots. I was just grabbing the face. I wanted to see the face and the voice match. I cut together something that plays, pretty well, but there's some, incontinuity and stuff. The final version will have the interviewer in a TV studio. She'll be a lot better calibrated, and dialogue will be better, probably a better voice too. But the main difference will be that the 4 guys will be actually on the moon, in the moon base, with their suits behind them. So it'll look a lot more authentic. It won't look like, like these guys just came down from the moon just for this interview to go back, which is what they did here. The reason I put them in the studio here was because I wanted to see how good I could get the faces looking with the right type of animation, and I'm pretty happy with it. So the audio might be a little low. I'll try and boost that as much as I can. Just so everybody just hang on, nobody go away. Just going to grab this, going to put it in one of the slots, and then I'm going to sit back and enjoy watching it too. So So I have not seen the whole thing in one piece yet, believe it or not. We're all get to watch this first together. So nobody go away. We're going to the Stratosphere Studio screen. I'm going to tee up this thing, and then you can tell me what you think of this experiment in storytelling. Okay, here we go. Ready? All right.
Well, today we're very proud and pleased to have a chance to speak with the four men that astonished the entire world just a few weeks ago with the official confirmation of Project Horizon and everything that entails. Gentlemen, you may not be fully aware of this, but right now you are likely the four most talked about men in the world, and yet we know nothing about you. Now, we know you're pressed for time, so let's just jump right into it. Major Mattingly, I understand you're in command up there. Can you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. My name is Robert James Mattingly Jr., and I'm a major in the United States Air Force.
Well, I've never heard anybody refer to you as Robert or Bob or...
Yes, sir, Major Bob.
Everybody refers to you as Mace. Is that some kind of nickname?
Actually, it's my tactical call sign.
Would you mind telling us how you got it?
While I was doing a routine RCS test in a rocket zipper that'd be the NF-104 Starfighter, I was leveled about 35,000 feet, just under Mach 2. I lit the AR-2, and just as I was about to start the pitch-up maneuver, it exploded.
Your airplane exploded?
No, just the rocket engine. Took the entire vertical stabilizer with it, though, and since the 104 is a T-tail, the elevators departed as well, so I had to punch out just a tick over Mach 2. Anyway, when I got back to Edwards, the first thing the flight surgeon says to me is, "So what's it like to eject at Mach 2?" And I said, it was like getting hit in the face with a big frickin' mace. You're sitting there in air-conditioned comfort, and the next instant, you're looking at 1,500 miles an hour of airspeed, so yeah, it hurt. Anyway, the name stuck, so, that's me.
Wow. Well, that's quite a story. Now, Grim, is it?
Yes, ma'am. Unofficially, obviously.
Can you tell us about yourself?
Well, ma'am, yes, I can. My name is Stephen Christopher Sinclair, and I'm a Command Sergeant Major in the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
And how did you get the name Grim?
Ma'am, Command Sergeant Major is not a commonly seen rank, and we have a significant amount of authority for enlisted personnel anyway. So the ranks sometimes say that running into an actual CSM is like bumping into the Grim Reaper.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
All right. And next we have...
Yes, hello. My name is Jeffrey T. Gordon, and the T is for Thomas. And I'm on extended assignment from Naval Reactors, or to be more precise, I'm a graduate of the United States Navy's Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, which of course lies under the regulatory umbrella of the National Nuclear Security Administration. I hold the rank of Commander in the United States Navy, and my military occupational specialty is nuclear engineering.
Well, that sounds very impressive.
Thank you. I think so too. Now, of course, there's a lot of study involved, and you never really stop learning, so it keeps me on my toes.
Wonderful. And finally...
Sorry to interrupt. Gordo is not a call sign or anything. It's just kind of a nickname the guys gave me. It, doesn't really mean anything.
Well, thank you, Gordo. And finally, we have this very tall gentleman.
I'm not sure gentleman's exactly the term we're looking for here.
Well, thank you, Bob. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, I'm very well, thank you for asking. And you?
I am spectacular. Thanks for asking.
So, what can you tell us about yourself, Doug?
Well, what would you like to know?
Okay, well, why don't you start with the basics then?
Well, all right, I can do that. Douglas Elliott Davenport, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, and my tactical call sign is Sparks.
Yeah, just don't call him Sparky.
No, he's right. Don't ever, ever call him Sparky.
You know, if you guys want to finish for me here, I've got an ice-cold hams waiting for me in the fridge. Honestly, it's like living among jackals up here sometimes.
Behave yourself. You're on national television.
We're not on national television, Grimms. There's no such thing as national television anymore. We're on the goddamn internet.
So, Doug, I understand that you're a pilot.
Well, I am when there's no skill required, yes, ma'am.
No, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What if you have to do something that does require a lot of skill?
Well, in a case like that, then I would have to revert to being a naval aviator.
Okay, here we go.
There's a difference?
Hell yes, there's a difference. A pilot has to stop a highly streamlined supersonic aircraft within, let's say, 8,000 feet of runway. That's not easy. And naval aviators, on the other hand, we have to do it within about 150 feet, which means between the 50-yard line and the end zone. So that's less than 2% of the available runway that old ham hands over there needs if he's having a really good day and is right on the ball. So let me see here. 8,000 feet versus 150 feet. That means if my math is correct, and it is correct, then a naval aviator would be 53.33333 times better at flying an aircraft than your typical Hun-driving chair force puke.
You're going to have to excuse him, ma'am. Sparks is the kind of guy who puts on his flight suit to go to McDonald's, so he's kind of, all ate up about this kind of thing.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Well played, sir.
Well, that escalated quickly. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there is your exclusive first interview with Project Horizon's Major Mace Mattingly and the last men on the moon. Well, today we're very proud and pleased to have a chance to speak with the four men that astonished the entire world just a few weeks ago with the official confirmation of Project Horizon.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, the calibration on the interviewer is terrible. Her eyes doing the twitching, but in any event, I don't know. I'm real happy with the way it cut together. Why is her head so big? It probably has something to do with the fact, as I mentioned before I started this, that I had about 20 minutes to get that character prepared. So, like everything else, if you've been watching, I'm posting to the Stratosphere Studio channel all of the test takes and so on. And the first take of Mace, which you may remember from Stratosphere Studio Show a couple of weeks ago, was just so shockingly bad I almost didn't post it. And so, doing this. And so it's all a question of having to get these characters dialed in. But when they get into the proper setting and they're wearing, flight suits or whatever the case may be, I did this to see if it was possible for me to do, basically to act the whole thing out for reasons I've mentioned many, many times. Facial motion capture has to be done, same as the voice. I can't send it out to somebody else, and it's just not feasible to have different actors for this. So I had different voices. I tried to change the inflection a little bit. I know that I need more work on the inflection and the pacing, but there were moments where I think I got it right. I think Steve and Jeff are both pretty solid and kind of different. The thing about Doug is, since he's going to be complainer in chief, I did a number of takes with him with a southern accent, and he just came off sounding just really arrogant and kind of unpleasant. And he's going to have an unpleasant. He's going to be a little problematic, to use the word that the progressives use so much. But recently, like a couple days ago, I realized, okay, so the only salvation that this guy can have, the only saving grace that this guy can have, is that he's willing to laugh at himself, and Yeah, and as Roadrunner says, just don't call him Sparky. Everything will be fine. But his ability to laugh at himself is just so redeeming. I find that to be redeeming in virtually everybody as well. But I was real happy with the way he came out. There's still, one of the everything that you saw there was done off of the same calibration take, and it was better than the original one, but still not great. The thing is not looking at the dots. I didn't have to put dots on my face. It's MetaHuman 2, which is what we're using here in Unreal 5.2, is looking more at shadows than dots, or changing geometry of your face, which is why it can build your face from just this angle, and it's got it. So it a number of the earlier takes I did, I turned my head too far to look. I haven't got the suit and the this thing. So I didn't do this. So if you do this when you turn your head, no matter which way you turn your head, it's very natural. You look over this way, you turn just normally. This thing's recording your head motion. This thing's recording your face, and so the computer, the facial motion tracker, is always looking directly at your face. Always got a real good look at you. But in this particular case, it was going off of an uncalibrated thing for her, so she's doing a lot of this, and if I'd had a little more time, I would have done it better, and you'll see it better next week. So there you go. But main thing was did you feel like that there were 4 different people there? Well, technically 5, I guess. And I had a general idea of the kind of the kidding around, and I like that very much. And I also like the fact that Steve Sinclair is not a fan of this. In fact, I don't think Steve Sinclair is much of a fan of Doug at all, to be perfectly honest with you. And that kind of thing helps a lot, because it gives you something to play off of. And then again, once you get the characters basically established, when I put the first take of Steve up on Stratosphere Studios, I think it maybe got 80, 90 views or something. But the first one of Steve, the red-haired guy, in when I put him up, I had 2 people say, "Oh, I'm really going to like this guy. I really like this Steve. He doesn't put up. He's not talkative. He's just a real straightforward guy. He's a mechanical guy. He builds things." And I've talked about this so many times, not just about this, but in writing in general. When you have a good idea of who these people are, and they're different enough, then there are things that, honest to God, just kind of write themselves. For example, I'd mentioned the idea that these guys might be out on for recreation. They go out to these Chase Lounge chairs that they have out on the lunar surface. Their moon base is in a crater, which is almost always dark. And I think for their sanity, it's important that they get outside, a couple hours a day, even though they're still in their suits. Otherwise, they just go completely stir crazy. So they take, so they've got these 4 Chase Lounge set up, and once a day, a couple, 3, 4, 5 times a week, whatever. They just go on out, and they hang out there, and they drink beer on the moon, and they watch TV, and just kind of talk to each other. And I had thought about, because the Earth there's the television, Earth is behind the TV. I mean, it's just fantastic. Here comes today's message. And I had really liked the idea of them just kind of singing, not like intentionally going out to sing. It's just kind of like, and I like the idea of them singing Sloop John B by the Beach Boys. And I like the fact that I could probably sing all 4 different parts badly, but each one of them would be processed, and so it would sound like these 4 guys actually singing the multiple harmonies on Sloop John B. And I like Sloop John B, obviously, because, I want to go home. This is the worst trip I've ever been on. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about Steve, who's so taciturn and so quiet and so, no nonsense and stuff. So he's going to be he's got a little pressurized hangar there, and that's where he's going to be building his candy apple red moon buggy, which is already working. He's just working on that thing. It's what he does for recreation, like so many people who work with their hands. He just he just likes to go out in his spare time and build things and fix things, tune them up, tweak them out. And so it occurred to me that he would really like Hot Rod Lincoln as a song, but he'd never sing it because he's just not that kind of guy. He would just never embarrass himself. And then I realized, oh, this would be a really cool scene. You know, you show the camera's in the hangar there, in the pressurized hangar, and Steve's like, you know, he's getting on the little truck thing, getting underneath the thing, and he's got his wrenches. And then he starts singing Hot Rod Lincoln to himself. And there's nobody else in the room. And then you cut to the control center, and it's one of the guys, I haven't figured out which yet, says, guys, you gotta see this, you gotta see this. What? So they've got this black and white monitor TV on from 1960, but they've got the sound, and they're sitting there in the control room, and they're watching, like, you know, this guy who's like the Grim Reaper. He's just like Command Sergeant Major. And he's just sitting. Have you heard the story of that hot rod race when Fords and Lincolns are setting the pace? And he's just singing it because he's having fun. And it's like they get a chance to kind of peek in on the guy and realize that he's, you know, he's just an extraordinarily disciplined individual. And there's something really, really, really charming that I like about that, especially because they would never play it for him, ever. They'd never, ever let him know that they saw it, because if they did, he'd never do it again. And so that dynamic among men is just really, really good, really, really good. And this is the thing I'm really liking so much about this. I'm just liking it an awful lot. So it's coming along as fast as I can move it. But a great deal of the last 2 months of working on this was like, oh, I have to learn this again. And plus, there's significant changes in 5.2 compared to 4.26 or 27 that I did Dias for Dungeon on. So that was good. I saw. I don't want to be terribly misunderstood about this. Today was the day that the moon landing hoax aired on Fox Nation, on streaming service on Fox Nation. So they've got like a free week if you want to see it. And I was a little disappointed with it. I knew I wasn't gonna get anything as much as I wanted in there, but I don't know. I just found the whole thing to be just a little. It's not like it was just. I don't know what to say. There's a language warning for one thing. Jimmy Phelan's doing great, and we had a lot of fun shooting, and there's just a lot of stuff in there. I think I look over made up. You know, it's not anything I had any control over. I kind of felt like I looked like a, you know, some kind of gay Brazilian prostitute or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it didn't have the substance that I wanted to, so I just need to make that moon landing case and just put out a video of my own on that. Just here it is, you know, because all of the ammunition that I had for that, I don't think they used 10% of what I brought in there. But in any event, it was fun to watch, and it was nice to be able to say I was in the same television show as Captain Kirk, so that was pretty cool. And I'll throw a link up there tomorrow when I get in the morning. So there was that. Related to this whole idea of why I'm so powerfully motivated about this idea of 1966 on the moon, I think it was in Stratosphere Lounge show. Somebody might have been this show, but I think it was Stratosphere Lounge show. Thank you very much for that, Tom. Somebody had mentioned a book called The Fourth Turning, and I said, boy, that really sounds interesting. I really need to get that book. So I did. I started reading it. I just barely cracked it open, but it's basically pretty compelling so far about these kind of rhythmic cycles that are much shorter than I had thought they were. Much shorter. Pretty much every 100 years or so, 1775, and then you get the revolution in 1865. You've got the Civil War in the 1945, you've got the, every 80 years, that's one lifespan. You get World War II, and then 2025, who knows? But the thing I got most about it, and I'll tell you how it relates to this, the stuff that you just saw. The guy's making a very good case that this generational sequence happens again and again and again, just as a result of kind of the inevitable outcome of the previous generations. Essentially, it's like 4 flavors of different generations, and I'm just barely into it. But the author did say something I thought was really, really, really good and really interesting. He said that there really are 3 ways that humans think about time. He said in the very beginning, pre-civilization, pre-writing days, people thought of time as chaotic, which meant that there was no connection to anything else. The past really didn't matter. The future was completely unpredictable. It was just, something happened, something happened, something happened. Oh, well, what do you know? Something happened. He said as you get into agricultural and stuff, and you get people who are dedicated to these kind of things, it becomes clear that time is actually rhythmic. I think the expression that he used that I like very much is, you know that winter is coming, and even 2 winters that are not, even a mild winter and a severe winter are more like each other than the winter is like the fall. And so he's listed these 4 stages of civilization, and he calls them the turnings. And the 4th turning is when the thing goes to chaos. Not when time goes to chaos, when society goes to chaos. There's an updated version of the book called "We Are in the 4th Turning," and I'll get a look at that too when I finish this one first. But I think there's a lot of truth to that. But what he said that gave me not only hope but a great deal of perspective, I think. It is also the same 4-part rhythm of, strong men make good times make weak men make bad times make strong men. We're getting into the bad times make strong men cycle. And I wasn't one of those strongmen generation. My dad was the GI generation, they're calling it. The astronauts were all silent generation. They were too young for World War II, but they were ahead of the boomers. And the point that this guy's making is, since you can't stop since winter's coming, there's nothing you can do about it. Things are falling apart, and that's because they've just been in place too long. All the systems and all of the assumptions are obsolete, and they need to be kind of burned away, and like the brush in a forest fire. But he said the 3rd way to think about time is linearly, and linearly is that there's a history started there, goes there. It's a straight line. And you can modify the course a little bit, but it's like that happened and this happened. It's not chaotic. It's just boom. It's a direction. And he said that, I'm sure he's an American author. I think he is anyway. He said that Americans are more linear thinkers than anybody else in the history of the world. We really like the idea that we basically can control the arrow of our destiny. And when things are going well for America, we think that this linear model is just swell because we like where the arrow is going. But when the arrow is pointing off the cliff, we tend to despair more than perhaps we should, because since we think about time in a linear fashion, it's just like, oh, we're going off the cliff. Well, then once we're off the cliff, we're in the ocean, and that's the end of that story. That's over. He's saying, no. The real truth of it is cyclical time, which is what the second group did. They realized that seasons come, moons, months, days, orbits, motion of the planets, everything's regular, everything's cyclical, and he's making the case that human civilizations and human generations go through these same things too. And I so far I'm pretty compelled by this. So what does that have to do with what you just saw? Well, it's got 2 things, I think. One of them is, if he refrains from calling them the greatest generation, which I think is wise. So he says if the GI generation went through these unbelievable hardships with the Depression and then World War II, when they came out of it and as they got older, They wanted a civic society that was worth the sacrifice that they made. They wanted civic order. They wanted law and order. They wanted growth. They wanted progress. They wanted to see that the things that they'd fought for, we're going faster, higher, better. Everybody's got a refrigerator now, that kind of thing. That GI generation was involved with this previous cycle of chaos. Then came the boomers, which is me, and our parents were GI generation. So we had direct contact with people who were in the chaotic times, but we weren't in the chaotic times ourselves. But because we were raised by people who were in them, we have kind of a appreciation for them. But we start to loosen our standards a little bit. We're a little more, self-centered, and considerably more self-centered, because the GI generation wanted to make sure that we didn't have to go through the crap that they went through. Then you get to, somewhere on the border of Gen X, millennials, where things are much less. You're one step further removed away from all of the pain and chaos of the previous chaos cycle. Your parents, the boomers, are kind of narcissistic and self-centered. And so Gen X is like the abandoned generation, the nomad generation, I think he calls it. They're just looking for some kind of meaning. They're looking for some kind of order. And then finally, the Gen Zers and the millennials are, I think he said artist generation, where I might have that backwards. But he basically said at this point, they're so far away from hardship, and that they're searching for. Things are falling apart because when everything is there for you, what are you going to do? But the point he made that I thought really stuck with me was that I'm just cracked the book. It's either Gen Z or the generation following Gen Z. I really just do not remember. But one of those two generations is going to be the generation of heroes. They're going to be the next. They're the ones. Certainly, kids that are being born today are going to be the heroes. They're going to be the GI generation of the next cycle. So I was born on phase 2. My dad was born on phase 1. Gen Xers are born on phase 3, and Gen Zers are born on phase 4. And, by the way, all these relatively new terms like Gen X, Gen Z, relatively new terms, silent generation, lost generation. He pointed out something I never really thought of, but he said that Gen Z is the 13th American generation. It's the 13th generation since America's been born. And so when I heard that, when I heard the case, in fact, when I heard the case on the last show, when somebody said this is what the book's about, I found myself enormously relieved by this cyclic view, because it's not a linear line into oblivion. It's like, yes, this is, things are coming apart. That's what they do. Once every 100 years, they come apart, and then you get into periods of real hardship, and then there's another giant phase of building and progress and so on, and then things kind of mellow out, and then things start to get loose, and then things fall apart again. So the reason that this thing has had such an impact on me is because I really like the idea originally of doing it a commentary on the current cycle through the previous cycle or two. It's always 1966 on the moon. That's the tagline for this series. But the main thing I wanted to do was I wanted to put like a time capsule up there for the very young people, so that they can see in a way that they can relate to what that kind of freedom and hard work did on the previous cycle. It's, Star Trek had such an enormous effect on my life. Obviously, it just was a star to sail by, and that's what I'd like to do. This and the colonies, obviously. I'd like to put out there something that makes people my age feel nostalgia and connect to those ideas and stuff. For people who are younger, who, okay, boomer crowd, then they can either take it or leave it. But ideally, it would be there for the really young people, Generation Alpha, I guess they're saying. It would be there for the Alphas, because if this guy's correct, the Alphas are going to have a hard time. They're going to have a lot of hard work to do. and I think they need encouragement. So, there we go. Yes, J.B. Coulter said, I am talking about the fourth turning. Somebody mentioned it a while ago, and then there's a new updated version called the fourth turning is upon us. Yes, it is. It's upon us, so we can feel it every day. You see it. I don't know if you guys saw this video. It was making the rounds a couple days ago, where a guy went into a convenience store. I think it was in Bay Area, and he took one of those garbage cans on wheels, this giant, enormous garbage cans, and he lined it with a garbage can liner, walked into a 7-Eleven and just starts walking down the aisles, and with both arms just scooping everything into this bag, just scooping everything into this trash can. He's just everything you can get. And there's this other guy saying, "Hey man," talking to the store owners, "Nothing you can do about it, man. Nothing you can do about it. I mean, you just have to call your insurance company. Insurance company will pay you back for it. Don't worry about it. It's just nothing you can do. If you call the cops, they won't even come, and the guy will be gone by the time you get here." And unfortunately for the guy who was doing all the scooping into the bags, the two people who were running the store were not American liberals. Turned out they were from India. They were Sikhs, I want to say. And so instead of just sitting there and calling the insurance company, which they may or may not have, while this guy just came in and cleaned out their store and their livelihood, they just went into the back room and came out with a couple of one guy came out with one broomstick and started whacking on this guy pretty hard. And he was shocked. And he went down to the ground, and they kept hitting him. Now, it was not a baseball bat, because with a baseball bat you could kill somebody. A broomstick just doesn't have the mass to deliver that kind of bone crushing impact, but it does hurt. And this guy just kept going down, and he was just, ow, stop, ow, 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 okay, I'm sorry. And then the other guy who was off camera saying, "Oh, you better get out of the store." It's like, who are you, man? And so finally they hit him on the leg, and that hurt quite a bit. So the guy gets up and starts limping out. And as he was limping out, he turned to these two Indian Americans who were giving him a little lesson in civic decency. And as he was walking out the store, these are people he just begged to stop wailing on me. As he's going out the store, he says, "Can I at least get a soda, for free? Can you just at least give me a soda for my troubles?" Turns out they didn't give him the soda. So that's the world. Now, I talked about this with my wife, and my wife's from Russia, and I love her very much, and she's from a country that had some very, 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 very hard cycles, very, very hard cycles. And I said, "Honey, just because this thing is coming doesn't mean that we are all going to be consumed by it. It's just coming." I said, while Stalingrad was underway, pretty convincing case that it was the worst place to be ever at any time in human history. While that was going on, if you lived in Bermuda or Mexico or Argentina or something, it's not burning you down. It's just burning itself into the society. And so if I had to guess, it's kind of what I do for a living, I suppose, I would say that this next period of chaos is not going to be an invasion. That's certainly not going to be an invasion. I don't think it's going to be a civil war. I just think that the cities are going to fall apart. And since more than half of the people in the country live in cities, this is going to be quite a traumatic experience for a lot of people, because to me, that's where the fault line is. That's where democratic and progressive policies are in full force. That's where all the fraudulent voting is. That's where all the drug abuse is. It's where all the crime is. It's where all of the dependency is. It's where all of these failed policies are there. And this is the thing that this guy said about these cycles. He said that, and this is what got me to read the book, because again, I don't remember if it was Stratosphere Lounge, or I think it was Stratosphere Lounge. Person who said you really should read this said, instead of fighting to preserve the old paradigms, they're going to go away. So better to prepare for new paradigms, better to face the reality of winter is coming. You can't turn winter away. You can't wish it away. So the best thing you can do is be prepared for winter. And if you're prepared for winter, then winter won't kill you. And I thought, wow, I really like the sound of that too. So if I'm right about this, then half of the country is going to find itself in a situation very rapidly where crime is going to be crime and decay and lack of services and all the rest of it. I've got some real concerns about the economy as well. I'm not concerned about working Americans, and I'm not concerned about them starving or not being able to figure it out. I think if the money situation collapsed tomorrow, the people in the cities would be very hungry very quickly, and the people who weren't in the cities would rapidly, and I mean within the space of a day or two, come to some kind of mutual agreement on what the new currency is going to be, and then we will trade with that currency. And so I don't think that this is a kind of conflagration that's going to just burn all of America down. But something has to happen to clean up this mess. And we all know that the budget's never going to be balanced. We know that the FBI is never going to straighten itself out. We know the election integrity is very badly damaged. We know all of these things. And so, here we go. Here comes winter. So let's get ourselves stocked up and prepared. And I think what that means really is to take care of each other. So I'm more than happy to work on in a field for food, and I'm not being the slightest bit flip or facetious about that. If that's what it turns out to be, I will show up and go out and rake as many hoses and lines of vegetables as I need that I would do. But you have to be willing to do that, and I think the biggest problem is going to be that many of these people living in the cities are they're just been so badly destroyed in terms of the environment for them. It's been just been a place to raid for money as far as these progressives are concerned, and a significant number of Republicans as well. So, what can I do as a guy who's as a storyteller? I've done a number of firewalls and afterburners. I think I need to do one about the moon landing. But what I'm really trying to do here is I'm trying to, in the language of the people who are going to be watching it, because if they don't see it, it doesn't matter. It's like the perfect political candidate who loses is irrelevant. This guy would have been the greatest president of all time, but he wasn't elected. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show them what. See, I'm right. I'm halfway between generations technically. I think most people say the baby boom ended in 1960. Some people say 64. So I was born in 59. So we're pretty much right at the end of it. The people who I admire the most, the Apollo astronauts, those guys were not greatest generation guys. They were silent generation guys. And so that kind of half generation in my dad's generation, I have direct contact with the generation. I don't have direct contact with what they went through, but I know what kind of people they are, which is why I write about them. And what I'm trying to do is to put an example of what that post chaos attitude looks like. This is it. In other words, yeah. So this is it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put somewhere visible an image of what next spring is going to look like. It's going to be, it's an image of last spring, but it will be the same vibe as next spring. And usually, the chaos doesn't move you backwards. It basically, you progress in the spring, everything grows in the spring, and then it kind of stabilizes, then it gets unsteady, and then it just dies, and then you keep on going up like that. So I just want the attitude on display, and I think that could be inspirational. I think sometimes also think, who are you kidding, Jack? Really, you and your little animations and stuff. And then I look over my shoulder here, or this shoulder, and I see the Gorn captain, and I realize, yeah, well, something had a big effect on me and my character, and it was, it was Gene Roddenberry. that's just the way it is. That's why I think so many people are so deeply moved by these kind of things. People who are younger than me, a generation younger than me, it's not Star Trek for them, it's Star Wars. So Eric Blake's got it right. It's like spring is coming, but winter's going to come first. And our job is to prepare for the winter and to get through it and try to make it as mild a winter as within our power. And most especially to keep an example of what's going to happen in the spring. Because, so far, it's not like World War II wiped us back to zero, and neither did the Civil War, and neither did the Revolution. They were just traumatic times where everything had to be rebuilt and reestablished and all the rest of it. So anyway, that's that. I'm real pleased with how this thing came along, and I find myself especially relieved at how fast I can do things that a month ago were like, God, how do I do this? Now it's just like zip, 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 zip. So I'm going to polish up that interview just to get it done, and then I'm going to keep working on the rest of the stuff, and do that. But I did like I really enjoyed writing the script for the interview you just saw. I knew it was essentially just a test project, just a test drive. However, I got a lot from it, and so now I think I'm really ready to do, hopefully do some serious work with it. So I was very pleased with it. I'll probably run it at the end of the show again too, just for fun. For those of you who may be tuning in late. So let's do this thing now. Oh, by the way, before I forget, thank you very much. Joe Cool with the Super Chat says, do they still sell ice-cold hams in California, Bill? Good to hear they have them on the moon. There's always ice-cold hams and T-bone steaks on the moon. Because when you use a Sea Dragon, that's an awful lot of frozen beef you can get up there. I've never had a hams. I just looked at the most popular beers in 1966 and actually had a discussion on the show about which one to pick, and I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be Bud Light. And everybody's, oh no, hams got to be hams, which suits me fine because it's by far the best looking can. So I think what I'll do for the beer thing is, what I could probably do is I could. It's a simple model to build. So what I would do is I would build a steel cylinder with a hinged top on it and a latch. An over what's the word? Over center latch. So it'll be about the size of a beer can, just a little bit wider. And it'll have a tube coming off the top or out of the bottom. And so what'll happen is they'll be on the moon. Because got to make it believable. So they'll turn some kind of little valve on this thing, and then they'll take this thing open. They'll put a sealed can of hams in there, and it won't have the pop tops on it. It'll be just a sealed can like it was in those days. Put the sealed can of hams on, and then as this lid, this kind of dome-shaped lid comes down, you'll see that on the top there are these two little prongs, and so that when you close this thing and then latch it over, it's puncturing the can, and then at the same time that kind of pressurizes the thing, and so a little straw, and you're drinking your hams through a straw. That's how we're going to do it. But it'll be kind of cool to see him holding those cans. And straw should work if you've got a pressurized suit and a pressurized can. So that'll just be fun. This last thing on this, we'll get to questions. When I just was, for some reason or another, a couple nights ago, I just on YouTube, it's just like, hey, look, here's the movie The Battle of Britain. The 1969 movie, The Battle of Britain. So I just kind of randomly fast forwarding through it. And there's a scene, they spend a lot of time with the German pilots speaking German in that movie, which really, really makes it a big difference. About a third of that movie is spoken in German. And there's this one scene where where all of these young German pilots are arriving at their, at their billet or at their base or whatever, and they're all dressed, that German officer look. They've all got iron crosses. They're all super elite. And they're wearing the black suits and everything, and they're all talking, and they're all blonde, and they're all handsome, and they're all smiling and stuff. And I'm watching this, and just immediately behind my left ear, I hear Doug's voice saying, "Hey Mace, $50 says that these guys take 3 showers a day together." Something like that. And then I wanted to have Mace say, "Yeah, okay, but or Doug says, "Any place you can think of that's better, Mace?" I said, "No, this is it, man. This is it. Spitfires in the Battle of Britain, defending your country. That's as good as it got. That's as good as it got. That's where I would be." And so Doug's a pilot too. He says, "Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more." And then you just show some of the air combat stuff, and it's like fantastic. I'm sure this would get me canceled today if it became public knowledge, and so let me just put it out here on the internet where certainly there's no way that anybody will know. But I have a friend who's one of the guys who I did the trip with a couple months ago, and he was a historical reenactment guy, and he did all kinds of historical reenactments. So his whole house was just like a museum of Napoleonic costumes and all kinds of stuff. But it turned out he had like 3 or 4 pith helmets, the white pith helmets that the British Army used at the end of the 1800s. And sometime 15, 20 years ago, we sat around and watched this movie Zulu, and we were all sitting there drinking sherry, and we had our white pith helmets on, and that kind of commentary thing, I think, is important too. The nice thing about Zulu is they treated the Zulus with such for the time. It was just incredible how much respect they showed the Zulus. Prior to that, it had been all ooga booga kind of thing, and but in this movie, they're portrayed as extraordinarily brave and capable and threatening adversary, and honorable adversary to some degree too. So that's smart. The higher you value your villain, the bigger the win is for you. So it's a story of Rook's Drift, and that was an amazing actual adventure. So in any event, that's basically where we are. So I'm starting an hour late, so I'm going to keep it relatively short tonight. But let's go ahead to the questions and see what we can get. Sacred Order of Knightly Valor, by the way, with a super chat. Thank you. Off topic, a surgeon I know was training a young doctor to do a hysterectomy. The 3-hour procedure took 6 hours due to the trainee's poor manual dexterity, raised on smartphones, never handled tools. I am very, very, very concerned about that. I remember 10 or 12 years ago that there were reports coming out that young children, 4, 5, 6 years old, couldn't stack blocks. They didn't have the motor skills to stack blocks, which is not terribly difficult for those of us who have stacked blocks. But they were saying, no, there's a real noticeable lack of physical dexterity in terms of, your ability to grip, find anybody who's ever had to try to get a spark plug out of a tight place knows exactly what I'm talking about. That just kind of, oh man, So if it turns out that because they never use tools or baseball bats or anything else other than just fingers across a screen or their thumbs, that could be a real problem, because that's not something you can train away real quick. That's something to be really concerned about. And it's a shame because Coffee Shinato says that's what robot surgeons are for. Yeah, well, maybe. JB Coulter, this is why I love this audience, says the carbonation probably be good enough to drive half the contents up a flexible tube through a stent in the spacesuit and onto the naut's mouth. The second tube with valve, ... Yeah. Sure, why not? Or they just pressurize it. Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. So all I really need is a metal canister, maybe a clear one. No, I better be metal, I think. Yeah, they put the hams in there. Oh man, this is as good as I remember it. It's nice and cold out here. This ham's too. It's 220 degrees below zero out here, and things probably have to be heated as well, I guess. And Max Model says, Airfix magazine said that the surgical students in the UK lacked dexterity to the point where they could not perform surgery. Now that's genuinely alarming. The remedy was to have them start building kit models to build dexterity. There's something else I hadn't thought about. I built no less than 100 plastic, certainly no less. I bet you I built 40 F4 Phantoms in 1/72nd scale. I bet I built 40 of them. And I put a lot of effort into one that was 1/32nd scale or something. But I built a lot of plastic models. I built every single airplane there was. I built virtually every World War II tank there was, and I always liked the M48. I thought that looked good, and I always thought the Sheridan looked really cool. It's got that snubby little barrel, but it just looked like a space science fiction kind of tank to me. And I remember liking the Panther too, the Panzerkampfwagen 5. That thing was a tough-looking tank. And the King Tiger as well. I built all of them. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why I like history so much. And back in the days before World of Tanks or anything like that, my friend Steve and I would take like a couple tanks around the back and play in the dirt, and then we would, how you gonna tell whether you scored hits or not? So we had that one figured out. We went out there with a couple of drinking straws and a couple pieces of tissue paper, and then we would see the other guy's tank, and we get down as low as we go to this, and spitball the thing. That worked great. I don't think I could build a model anymore because I understand the glues are just useless now compared to what they used to be, because they used to be really good glue and also made people high. So because some people decided that they wanted to fool around and find out, now nobody gets anything. That's the story of our days and our times here. All right, let's see what we got here. Logging in. I did post the true story of the atomic bombs. I finally remembered on August 6th for the first time since I did it 11 years ago or something. Gorilla Glue. No, Gorilla Glue is awesome. But I don't know if you can build models with that. Maybe. Because that red Testors glue was awesome. I remember when they came out with the Testors decaf version, the light version. Just as I stopped building models, I don't even remember what year that was, but just as I was ending, I said, where's the glue? Well, this is the new glue. It smells different. Yeah, it doesn't smell as strong. It's not as strong. Okay, you put this thing together and it just falls apart. But that old glue, that welded the plastic together. It actually melted the plastic. If you put a big glob of it on the surface of a model, it would just turn to mush. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Here we go. Okay. Stratosphere Lounge questions and more. I always wondered about the and more. I always feel like I'm missing something. Here we go. All right, so thanks for everybody who's playing along. Here's Ian Noland, and nice and short. And so here we go. Bill, did you see that NASA and Lockheed are building a fusion rocket? The key thing that most people were forgetting is for fusion for rocketry, we don't have to be net energy positive. It's not SpaceX, but what do you think? A fusion rocket would be great. Fusion rocket, or is it a nuclear rocket? I don't think it's a fusion rocket. No, it's a. I know where the confusion probably is. It's a nuclear thermal rocket, not a thermonuclear rocket. It's a fission rocket. Basically it's a NERVA rocket. It's an atomic engine. So I'm amazed that's happening and pleased, to say the least. So basically, here's how this thing works in a nutshell. We are more or less at the limit of what chemical engines can do in terms of efficiency. We've tried so many different fuels, so many different ratios of fuel to oxidizer and all the rest of it. And we're pretty much at the maximum now. And the reason is that the chemicals don't get any hotter than this when you mix them together. This is about it. The nice thing about an atomic rocket, nuclear rocket, is that if you pass a liquid, ideally liquid hydrogen, if I remember correctly, if you pass a liquid through the core of a fission pile, what comes out at the other end will be hotter and more energetic than anything that you could do mixing two chemicals. So back when I was doing heavy research on this, if I remember correctly, there's a concept in rocketry called specific impulse, and it's not exactly miles per gallon, but that's probably the most useful way to think about it. Specific impulse basically says how much thrust can you get out of a unit of fuel or propellant or whatever the case may be. And I want to say that the Saturn V F5 engines were getting 250 seconds, and that the shuttle main engines got up to 450, and that was getting pretty close to the maximum limit of what you could do with chemicals, around 450 seconds of specific impulse. Now, the nuclear core engines that we used out in NERVA were getting 800, so double, pretty nearly double. And then you can keep going with that. So the simplest nuclear rockets, I think I personally think it's a single simplest motive device ever designed. You just have a bunch of uranium tubes, and you get these up to criticality, and then you just let water, or it could be water actually, just some propellant mass, some kind of mass, goes through those things, heats up, shoots out the back, rocket goes the other direction. That's great. Now, what do you do if you want more push than that? Well, it comes a point where you can only get those fusion, that fission core, that uranium core, can only get so hot, because if it gets any hotter, then the metal that's containing it will melt. No matter what you use, sooner or later you're just going to melt the metal. And they had, so guys came along and said, okay, well, what about a pebble bed nuclear rocket? I said, that sounds cool. What's that all about? Well, we're going to just basically spread out the total energy so it's not so hot in one place, and okay. And then there's something called a gas core nuclear rocket engine where the it's no longer uranium pellets, it's uranium gas, uranium fluoro, and you contain that radioactive gas inside a magnetic torus. And since it's not coming into direct contact with anything, you can get that very hot. And the gas core nuclear reactors are talking about ISPs of 2,000. And the nice thing too is that, and this is a major deal, is that if you are going to use a nuclear rocket, you don't have to, everything you can carry will be propellant. If you look at a Saturn V, 60% of the first stage is the fuel, and 40% of it is oxidizer. You need to get oxygen into that chemical reaction. So most of the stuff you're taking up is, significant portion of it, almost half of it's oxidizer, in order to make the rocket engine work. If you take a Saturn V and you give it nuclear rockets, then the entire weight of the Saturn V is useful propellant. And that's an enormous game changer. When you're talking about those kind of weights, 40-50% of the total mass of the stage, that's a big deal. And there are plans you can go even higher and higher and higher. Theoretically, a fusion reaction would be able to get hotter than the fission reaction. Well, it's the surface of the sun, so yes. And then, from a hypothetical point of view, matter-antimatter reaction is even more energetic and produces greater heat. So it doesn't matter what you... So the funny thing about this is on a nuclear rocket, the stuff that comes out the back end of it is not the fuel. It's just mass. It's just propellant mass, water or methane or hydrogen. It's not the fuel. The uranium is the fuel. This is just stuff that's just on its way out. So the hotter you can get that stuff, water, methane, hydrogen, whatever, the hotter you can make it, the more violently it expands, and the more violently it expands inside a rocket chamber, the more energy you're going to get per pound of propellant mass. And so there's chemical, then there's what NASA's talking about doing, which is essentially fission core uranium thing. Then there's a gas core nuclear rocket, which can get even hotter because it's not in direct contact with the containment. And then above that, you could have a fusion reaction that's making things even hotter. And above that, you could use a matter-antimatter reaction, which is making things hotter still. So, yes, it's a great first step. It's just that this first step was taken in 1967, 68, 69, somewhere like this, out in Jackass Flats, Nevada, where the NERVA program built, I used to know the exact number, I want to say they built 40 of them, 35, 40 of them. Different designs, they all work just great. And you wouldn't want to use that in the atmosphere, but once you got it into orbit, then it's just makes everything possible. So, there you go. Hang on a second. CP Tome says, Zubrin's idea is mix uranium salt into water, put damper material inside the tank and pipes, pump it up to the reaction chamber, prompt critical as it goes out the nozzle, water absorbs the energy, flashes to steam. See, this is what we're able to do when we put our minds to it. We're actually pretty damn smart when it comes to, hairless tree apes. It's just that as these cycles that we were talking about earlier turn, we were never stopped by not being able to do it. As a matter of fact, from a technological point of view, it's been easier and easier and easier and easier to go to the moon. But from a internal point of view, from a moral or political or just a vision kind of thing, especially the politics, it's become virtually impossible. I remember when they launched the Cassini probe to Saturn. Can't use solar cells out at Saturn, although I think the Europeans are trying with a Jupiter mission, or Lucy, I think, is going to have. Yeah, Lucy's got 2 enormous solar arrays, which will, okay. At least in space, those solar arrays are constantly generating electricity. Doesn't get to be nighttime up there. But Cassini, like the Voyagers and Pioneers, had a kind of a super simple thing called a nuclear thermal generator. I think basically just a little piece of hot uranium, put it out on the end of a boom, and you just cycle water through it or whatever the propellant is, and not the propellant, whatever the heat transfer source is, and then it cranks a turbine, and that's your electrical power. But I remember when they launched Cassini, it had one of these little mini sub-reactor kind of things, a couple of RTGs on there, and everybody was going crazy. And I saw news reports from people saying that they're going down there to protest the launch of the Cassini warhead. And, we can't possibly launch this. It doesn't matter if we learn all about Saturn and orbit the planet for 20 years and take all these amazing pictures and gain all this knowledge. No. That's certainly not worth the chance that, that this thing might come down and irradiate a grouper or something. So everywhere you look now, it's people who are determined to stop things from happening, things that have no impact on their lives whatsoever. They just do it because that's what they do. This is the Karen gene, which is multiplying rapidly, I'm sorry to say. Anyway, I'm glad to hear about it, and I have high hopes for it, and I think this might be the beginning of a swing back to some kind of sanity in terms of nuclear energy, and I'd like to be a small part of that too. Okay, moving on. Andrew Allen. The Barbie movie is radically feminist and misandrous, and is also the breakout hit of the summer. Its second week is huge, suggesting great word of mouth. Is it the case that there really is a giant audience for man bashing, got woke but definitely not broke? Or is it so absurdly over the top that the audience ignores it, i.e., the Robocop effect? Regarding Robocop, apparently director Paul Verhoeven thought it was an accurate representation of America as some sort of corporate fascist hell state. Yeah, you had the same idea with Starship Troopers. The American audience ate it up all the same because we quite frankly looked at the movie as silly fun and obviously nothing like the rest of America. Should we worry about the success of Barbie, or is it just a dopey movie about dolls? Well, it's not just a dopey movie about dolls. However, they are lying about Barbie. The trailer shows it as being what people are expecting to go see, which is a kind of like an animated kind of a thing where, oh, look, it's Barbie Land, and little girls who've grown up with Barbie and women who grew up with Barbie anxious to go see it. So it's not like they advertised it the way it really is, but nevertheless, it's like you say, the numbers are good, and there is some word of mouth out there now. So I don't know. Blank Friday says that normies just don't care at all, and I think maybe he's right about that. This is the danger of incrementalism, because if that movie had come out in 1960s when Barbie came out, or in the 80s or 70s or 80s, nobody would have believed it. Nobody would have, people would have just said, this is absurd. But now we've had, 15, 20 years of stunning and brave, strong boss girl, warrior princesses, and 20 years of men being nothing but either evil or stupid, or generally both. And so it's not even so much that people want to see it as they're just not offended by it the way that, when I say offended by it, I mean just like, this is ridiculous. This is all part of the big upcoming kaboom, when the wrecking ball of reality starts smashing people in the face. Because now we've had 2-3 generations, 2-3 of the 4 pie chart cycles of the big wheel. 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 of them now have been so far away from actual calamity and disaster that they can afford to say things like, essentially, men are useless, and the world would be much better if only the women ran things. I'm utterly convinced that, well, the reason that they're not running things is because I think everybody would be dead if they were. My experience has been, and this has something to do with the kind of arcade thing, wolves and other creatures that are strong and have potential for doing great physical violence, they're predators, have behavioral limitations on what they do, and honor and mercy and things like that are the aggressive instinct, just basically standing down in order to keep ourselves from ripping ourselves apart. I think that this entire idea of honor and so on is basically what it is, and I just don't think I don't know if I've met any women that really get honor. I'm not saying there are no honorable women or no women who behave honorably. I'm not saying that at all. I don't think I've ever heard of one who really ever talked to me about it of any kind. And secondly, if they did, I don't remember any of them really getting it. I think it's a interesting thing. Yes, J.V. Coulter beat me to it, but yes, men's usefulness will be rediscovered as we pass into the fourth turning. Exactly. I'm sure it's fun for women, especially feminists, to go and see movies where Natalie Portman punches out, these guys. And I'm sure that there's a lot of women out there who go to the Barbie movie now, see Barbie, suddenly on the sidewalk in Santa Monica, gets slapped on the butt by the first guy that she encounters, which happens, as I say, every moment down in Santa Monica. And then, of course, instead of just being offended, she turns around and punches the guy in the face and knocks him out. That's just plain wish fulfillment writing. It's just plain, it's just kind of sad, really. You know, we're going to make this movie so we can show the guys, and many of them believe this, and they have there is no way for them to be disabused of this idea, except for trans sports. And when you get into trans sports, which is why I find it hard to understand why they are pushing trans sports so hard, because frankly, it's the only thing that's out there now on the cultural horizon that just completely show on a daily basis just how much faster, stronger men are. It just I'm amazed that they really want to show Leah Thomas beating the second place swimmer by 30 seconds. Not 0.3 of a second, not 3 seconds, 30 seconds. Why? You know, the same people are like these, the same people that say, oh, there's no difference between men and women, and women are, you know, strong and they'll be warriors. All they need is movies showing them as warriors and they'll be warriors. Okay, so along come males who compete in female sports and they pound the snot out of them. You would think that's not a message that they would want to send, but I guess you know, one level of victimhood is the victim du jour, and I'm sure it has a higher ranking than being just simply a woman. So it's all part of the overall plan to make us nuts and to bring the most fundamental aspects of reality into question. I saw a video that just really, I just had to kind of step back from like screaming the answer at the TV, or at the computer screen rather. I don't ever watch TV. It was, I think it was in Canada. Virtually positive it was in Canada. And it was a rugby match, women's rugby league, and there was a man there playing rugby with the girls, and he was not transitioning. He didn't have makeup on, didn't have long hair. It was just a man out there playing with the girls. And when a guy came up, I don't want to call him, I'm assuming he's a conservative, but when a guy basically took his little camera there and just started talking about it and said, why are you doing this? You know, why are you doing this? It's like, apparently he knocked 3 women out cold. They had to like go taken off the field in the hospital. And when they asked him about why he's doing this, the people that defended this guy were the other women. And one of these 18, 19-year-old women followed this guy out to his car, kind of cursing at him. And the guy says, why are you angry when I'm showing you that it's not fair for you to play against men? And she said, he's not a man. That's not a man. That's a woman. And he's, no, it's not. And she said, do you have a degree? Do you have a doctorate in biology? He said, no. He says, then you can't say whether it's a woman or a man or not. If you don't have a doctorate in biology, you can't say. I would have said, well, doctorate in psychology, maybe, you know, it'd be more useful here. So that's it. It's like, you're not a doctor of biology? Nope. Well, then you can't tell a man from a woman. Somebody ever asked me that. Are you a doctor? You have a PhD in biology? Yes, absolutely. I'm a leading researcher in the field of genetics, and so yes, I do have a doctorate in biology. What would you like to know about biology? Seems like there's a lot that you're going to need to know. And this is, think about this too. It's like, this is also part of another trend, and that trend is, let's leave everything up to the experts. Who are we to say? When I say we, I mean regular, you know, serfs and peasants like you and me. Who are we to say what a woman is? That's something we should leave up to the experts, because the experts are the ones that write the science, so they follow the science, and we're not capable of following the science. So let's just do what the people in the white coats tell us to do, and that way we don't have to think about it. And when the full force of the progressive reality distortion field is directed at a topic, that's what you'll get. You'll get people who are unable to say the most obvious single aspect of biology. I'm non-binary. Actually, your gender, your sexuality is the only thing about you that's binary. It's the only thing about mammals that are binary. It's almost the only thing about almost all animals that is actually binary. Everything else is a scale. The bigger ones, smaller ones, faster ones, thinner ones, all of this stuff. But the only on, off, left, right switch is sex. And you know, if she's going to stand there and say you can't say that that's a woman unless you have a PhD in biology, what does that actually say, really? It's like, okay, so if I bring back one, then you'll believe me? No, she wouldn't change her mind. If I brought back a doc, if I could find one with the courage to come out and say that a woman is a woman and a man is a man, if I could find one in Canada with the courage to go do that, then what would she do? Oh, hang on, I'll get one. This is Dr. So-and-so. He's leading a PhD, and he's written 65 papers in the last 10 years, and he's the head of the biology department at the University of Toronto. Doctor, what do you say? Well, the man is a man, and that's a woman and a woman, and that's a man. So then what? What does she do then? She just says, well, you don't know what you're talking about. She's not going to change her mind because she's lying to herself. She knows she's lying to herself. So, yeah. So as I've said before, I noticed this quite a while ago. The reason they're spending so much effort and time on the transgender thing is if they can get you to take a knee to the most obvious, prima facie, right in front of you, obvious fact of life, the most obvious single thing about humans is whether or not they're male or female. If they can get you to take a knee to that, then they've won everything else, because everything else is harder to prove than whether or not you're a man or woman. They're going straight for the gold standard. It's like, yeah. If we can convince them, they don't have to actually believe it. We just have to make them shut up about it. So, you know, Dave Big Booty says there's a Falcon 9 blasting off in 22 minutes. I'm getting so bored with this constant launching of space vehicles into orbit and bringing back the booster to 225, 230 times now. We've done it. And I'll probably watch it. This is, you know, I don't know. It's nice at least to be able to, when you're making your own stuff and you're not having to work for the, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah over the hill here. If I wanted to do this Major Mace Mattingly thing for anybody else, any traditional Hollywood backer, same for the colonies, there's no way I could have 4 men, just 4 men on the moon. Are you out of your mind? Where are the women? It's like, there aren't any women. Well, then why not? Well, it's because there weren't any. Because they weren't. The level of selection that you're taking now from, they're not even making the final third cut. Oh, that's racist. It's sexist. I'm sure it's racist as well. You know, I'm sure it's sexist as well. I don't care. I'm saying, look, we both know this is true, and you're pretending it's not, and so go ahead. But that's another thing that this kind of thing does, is it provides social proof for what people know to be true. And what they know to be true is if you go to an airport or a flight school, you're going to find that 93, 94% of the people learning to fly are males. And most of them are going to be white males. Does that mean that women are not allowed to fly? Nope. Does it mean black people are turned away at the gates? Nope. Does it mean that Hispanic people are discouraged from flying? Nope. I don't know what causes it, and I don't care. It's just that's how it breaks out. And I guarantee you that if by some miracle Artemis program beats SpaceX to the moon, there's a fair chance that SpaceX will do this, but it's 100% chance that if Artemis gets to the moon, the first person to walk off of that moon will be a woman, and I would not be at all surprised if it was a black woman. So that's where you are. We're having already issues with airlines because they're saying you can't hire white pilots. I mean, they're openly saying it. They're saying it in the military. We don't want any more white pilots in the Air Force. Well, that's 90+%, I'll bet you, of your candidate pool. And if you're going to say we're going to take 90% of our candidates out of the picture, then you're going to get a lower quality of people. That doesn't mean that women make lower quality pilots. It just means that there aren't as many women in aviation. And so if you've decided that 50% of your pilots have to be women, then you're going to have to go pretty far down the experience and the capability ladder. It's the same thing in inverse for equestrians, for example. You know, you go if you're a straight male and you want to meet women, go to a equestrian center, and if you're a straight woman and you want to meet men, go to an airport. Odds are 9 to 1, 10 to 1. That's basically it. Mike Knowles explaining why he liked the Barbie movie. Well, he's entitled to his opinion, and maybe he's got a great point. I don't know. He often does. All right, moving on. Lord, I have a lot of questions tonight. We're not going to get to those. I'm sorry to say. Let's see what I got here. Barbie movie. Okay, Chris Taylor. He's always got something interesting to say. Got a couple from him. I'm just going to be able to do one each. I think I could probably get one each of everybody tonight if I do that. A book recommendation and a question. If you've not already read it, read Pad Leader. Gunther Wendt's autobiography, The Unbroken Chain, is a good read with lots of first-hand stories of the early days of the space race, including early NASA's solution for your LA freeway exit social problem. My favorite is when you watch the first NASA launch of an Atlas rocket with Glenn and Shepard. Unbalanced aerodynamic forces buckled the rocket's skin about a mile up while the fireball was still bursting and debris was falling downrange. Shepard leaned over towards Glenn, his own expression characteristically blank. He spoke out of the side of his mouth and he said, "I sure hope they fix that." So will any or all of the men left on the moon be members of the ancient and honorable Order of Turtles? I have to tell you, I don't know what the ancient and honorable Order of Turtles is. I get the feeling that is a shocking admission to make for me, but I genuinely don't know what it is. I know what the Silkworm Club, people who've had to parachute out of an airplane. I don't know what the Order of Turtles is. It might be people who've had to eject, conceivably. I don't know. Somebody will tell me in a moment here. That's what's great about this group. AOC says, I am a turtle. And I like turtles. Mitch McConnell of the Order of Mitch McConnell. Jeez, God. So just trying to find out what the Order of Turtles is. Ancient Honorable Order of Turtles started as an informal drinking club between American World War II pilots. Okay. Is it guys who had to bail out? Jessica Williams says, as the residential equestrian, I can confirm that all the equestrian men are either gay or happily married, and the wife got them into horses. Gentlemen, start your engines. I bet you anything, if you were a straight flight attendant, you could make out like a bandit. Are you a turtle? Would be the challenge among pilots. Bet your ass I am, or you had to buy a round for the house. Is it just a kind of a club that you have to just say that you're in order to be in it? That may be the case. I don't know. I do like the fact that these guys, who's it, Glenn? Shepard said, I hope they fix that, not like I don't want to fly, or I'm not going, or gee, I'm nervous. It's like, I hope they fix that. It's not even they better fix that, or they're going to fix that before I fly in it. It's just like, I hope they fix that. Yeah, no, that's a definition of a steely-eyed missile man right there. It's like, oh, that thing just blew up. I hope they get that fixed. It'd be nice to not have to do that. You bet your sweet ass I am. Are you a turtle? You bet your sweet ass I am, or you had to buy a round for the house. Well, now I will never be caught as a member of, not being a member of the ancient and honorable Order of Turtles, and thank you very much for that, because I spent a fair amount of my life running around on snipe hunts, and I didn't enjoy that at all. Matt Reed says, I grew up around horses, but I'd sell my foot before I'd join a club over it. There you go. So okay, are you a turtle? You bet your sweet ass I am. Chris, I just will any of the men on the moon be members of the ancient and honorable order of turtles? You bet your sweet ass they are. Every one of them. Am I a turtle? You bet your sweet ass I am, Eric. As I said, any of the men on the moon be members of the ancient honorable order of turtles? I'm speaking for them, but you bet your sweet ass they are. Thanks for the heads up. It's not the kind of thing I usually miss, and when I do miss it, I'm embarrassed. So good to know. Let's see, moving on. I'm going to do one each, I think. Okay. Eli Knorr. It's a name we don't see too often. Hello, Eli. Good to see you. Do you have any comments on the development of the X-59 since it's rumored to start test flights in the upcoming weeks? Yeah. My comment is it's kind of ugly. For those of you not familiar with it, the X-59 is a experimental aircraft, hence the X. And it is designed specifically and exclusively to be able to fly supersonically with a greatly reduced sonic boom. Instead of that loud crack, it's more of a little, like a distant rumble. The nose of the thing is, I would say of the total length of the aircraft, at least 3/4 of it is nose. It just goes forever. It makes the stiletto, the X3 was it? Makes the stiletto look like it was a sapling. This thing just nothing but slowly tapering nose cone, and then there's no way to look out the front of that. So there's a little area where there's windows on the sides. Presumably, the pilot has a TV screen or something in front of him, or a periscope like he had on the Spirit of St. Louis. You couldn't see forward out of that airplane either. And then it's a little funky towards the back and stuff. I'm half joking about it being ugly and half not joking. I'd rather have sonic booms in cool airplanes than have little tiny baby sonic booms in ugly airplanes, but I'm not typical when it comes to this kind of thing. It does, however, have the ability to remake aviation. Although given the length of that nose, if you scale that thing up, I mean, I honestly don't. How would you taxi something like that if you made it big? But that's not the point, right? That's not the point. That's an engineering problem. That's not a physics problem. The physics problem is, can you make something go faster than speed of sound without generating that kind of shock wave? Now, for those of you who've never heard a sonic boom, by the way, and I hadn't heard one until I was 30, maybe 31, 32. You've seen them in movies, and it's like, no, it's not like that at all. I was at Edwards Air Force Base when I was flying gliders up in Palmdale, and we just a little drive, a 15, 20-minute drive. We went out there to watch shuttle land there, and we're all looking up, it should be overhead right now. I'm looking for a little tiny little speck of a shuttle, a little speck, I don't know where the hell is this thing. And then it's like somebody fired a .45 automatic about 1.5 feet behind my head, just bang! I mean, it was crazy, crazy loud. And then I looked up, and there was the thing just right there. I mean, it's the whole shape. It's just right over your head. It's like, oh, okay, that's a good way to announce you're here. The several times in Los Angeles, I don't remember. This might have only happened when the shuttle landed at Edwards. Probably true. I don't think it happened on every landing. It must have been just on the Edwards landings. But several times during the years that the shuttle was flying when I was living in LA, I would be sitting in my little apartment, and there'd be this bang, and you'd feel the whole apartment go. And every time it happened, I thought somebody's backed a truck into the building. Somebody's just backed a truck into the building. It was just like, boom, like this. It's like, what the hell was that? And it's like, oh, that would be the space shuttle coming back. There's a couple guys who are used to seeing this kind of thing. I would like to have seen or heard the X-15. Well, there are not enough sonic booms for my satisfaction personally. I just think I miss them. There just aren't any. I understand the problems. I do. I can make fun of them, but they're real issues. You can't have these kind of thing breaking windows or scaring the cows 5-6 times an hour. But with that said, it sure would be nice to go from Los Angeles to New York in an hour and a half, and we may figure out how to do that. So good for them. It's like I said, most of the X-planes are dealing with some kind of a engineering problem. Can we get more maneuverability out of forward swept wings? What is a lifting body? Can you create a vehicle that will generate lift without wings? All of that stuff. But this is a case where we're trying to change the laws of physics. So, thanks for the question, Eli. I'm very curious to know how it performs. I don't think they'd have built it if it didn't. So, the question will be, how mitigating is it? How quiet does it get? And secondly, how can you scale it? Because I'm sure there's a way. 1 second. Okay, so that's that. Looks like we got Eric Blake here, I think. Traditional hails and so on from one Vectron-loving degenerate to another here. So I had a thought. Well, somebody marked the calendar. One of the easiest ways for Mace, Steve, Gordo, and Sparks to find common ground with our lovely Russian cosmonauts is precisely the central theme of the series. That is, our ladies have utter contempt for how social morality has fallen apart on Earth in the years since their mutual settlements on the moon. Perhaps the cosmonauts are more bitter about it and are astonished at how well Mace and his boys are handling it by comparison. And here's an idea. Have the ladies tisk-tisk at Putin in mocking pity, as in little boy tries so hard at big man. P.S. Our friend Dave Big Booty has a perfect name for the landing lass. Far be it for me to steal his thunder when I have my own. Da. I can't wait to hear it, Dave Big Booty, if you're still here. We got 1, 2 to go, so we will get through those. Okay, so the cosmonauts. Russia is having none of this. None of it. And a lot of Eastern European countries are having none of it. Russians look at what's going on in America in just shock. In shock. Disbelief. And my feeling is that my shock and disbelief kind of peaked 12, 15, 20 years ago. This is one of the great dangers of incremental destruction, is that there's never enough of a moment for you to go, okay, that's it. Although Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light came awful close and may have, in fact, been a turning point. So the thing about that whole thing that we were talking about with Barbie is that it's always 1966 on the moon. So when these 4 guys went up there, those kind of women either didn't exist, the feminists, or they were, museum exhibit or something. And so the guys on the moon never got infected by this, and they never had to deal with women who were infected by this. And now the women who've been infected by this to the 3rd generation are looking around saying, "Where's my happiness?" I've got a 6-figure plus job. I drive a brand new BMW. I own my house outright, and I'm here with my cat. What happened? Well, there you go. Enjoy your life without your bicycle, lady. And so that whole thing is got to be reproduced too. I think the main thing I'm going to be trying to do with the male-female thing and the Mace Mattingly thing, Eric, is show what courtship is, because these bases are going to be fairly far apart from each other, and it's not going to be a David Booty, Tatiana Mironova, sure. Actually, had a kind of a fun idea that fun tribute to name them. I have 4 of them. I think I'd name them after the 4 daughters of the Tsar, which had so much of my interest. It's how I met my wife, was looking at photos of the 4 princesses Atma Olga, Tatiana Maria, and Anastasia. So there's that. But I mean, the reason that Steven Sinclair is building a red buggy, and by the way, he's going to build, once he's got that down, he's going to build one for all four of the guys, each in their own color, because mainly he wants to race. He's building a red dune buggy, a moon buggy, with, chrome on it, and I've got a good model for it. It looks really pretty slick, because he wants to just sort of accidentally drive past the Soviet base by accident, in an accidental kind of way. Like, oops, oh hey, hi, how's it going? I remember doing that on my first crush. I rode up and down. She was like 3 streets away from me in elementary school in Key Biscayne, and I just kept riding my bike up and down that street, just going back and forth from one place as somebody's wont to do. Just nothing special. I wasn't trying to impress anybody or anything. Often you'll see a 10 or 11-year-old kid riding his bike back and forth outside your house 15, 20 times a half an hour. So they're going to be doing manly things, and the Russian women are going to be real women, because even to this day, Russian women are not infected by this illness. Maybe, well, it's part of it, of course, is because the Russian men are considerably tougher than American men on the outside. I don't know if they're any tougher on the inside. I rather suspect they're not. But it's a much more combative society. Natasha got her driver's license, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago. She aced it. She aced her written test, and I was just so proud of her. Got her car on her own, with her own money, her own credit. And she was taking, about half of the driving she did was with me in my Camaro at night, and the other half of it was with an instructor in a dual control car. And this was a Russian instructor, and so those two went to take the actual driving test, and I was just sitting there by the phone waiting for an answer. And Natasha finally calls me and says, "Yes, I passed." I said, "Hooray, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah!" And made a big deal. Went out and celebrated a couple nights ago for the whole thing, and I asked her a couple nights ago while she was driving around, and I was just helping her with the navigation and things, getting a little familiar with the freeways. And I said, "Did this guy at least congratulate you when you passed the test?" She said, "No. No congratulations, nothing. That's just not how Russians do it." I kind of had to train her a little bit, because when I would show her things I was working on, like some of the early animations or things like that, "Honey, come take a look at this." Play it, and well, those eyes are not matching, and I don't believe this, and and I'm in this, and you can see his arm moving here, and all everything that's wrong with it. And after about 5 or 6 of those, I said, "I don't think things work the same way here. Maybe we could try that again." I'm not saying don't tell me what's wrong with it. I'm just saying if there's anything right with it, after having spent 4 days on this, I think I'd probably like to hear that first, or at least hear it. And they don't do it. They don't do it. And one of the most memorable moments of the entire time I've spent with my wife was early, when she got here, very early. We were shopping at a Whole Foods or something. I don't want to hear about it, because we just lived across the street from Whole Foods. Not like went there. We're generally Ralph's people. So we're checking out, and the one behind the checkout counter said, "Oh, that's such a pretty dress you're wearing. Thank you." And he says, "Is there anything that you can? Did you need any help with anything?" "No." "Okay, well, they're stacking the bags. Okay, well, have a great day. Good to see you. Have a nice day." And she walked out. We walked out together into the parking lot. She says, "I can't believe that this is real. I've always wanted to live in a place like this, where people are friendly." And she said, in a supermarket in Russia, the people who are doing the checking out are just throwing them. They're just throwing them, and you have to bag it yourself, and you just have to catch it. And most of them are not happy in that job, and so they're going to make sure you're not happy too. And And she can never get over how friendly this country is. And her daughter just plain doesn't believe it. We were driving a couple nights ago, because I still ride with her she goes virtually every place by herself now, but every now and then I'll ride with her like she has to go over the hill to Beverly Hills. It's a fairly complicated drive. You got to go down Laurel Canyon and all through Hollywood. It's a little tricky, so we kind of rehearsed it a couple times. And we were coming back home. It was late. It was about midnight or after. And we stopped at a light, and this sports car pulled up behind us, a convertible. And the guy in the front he almost looked like a Mexican cartel gangster. I mean, this guy was a hardcore looking guy. He had the neck tats and everything, and it was like, oh, okay. And Natasha, to her credit, because I think this is an excellent idea, has got 5 or 6 stickers that say "Student driver, please be patient." There's actually more sticker than car visible when she's driving. And those stickers buy her a lot of slack. But we're sitting there, she's driving, and this guy pulls up in this little sports car, tough, mean-looking guy. And he sees all these stickers on the car, and he turns to my wife, and he just goes, like that. Way to go. I thought, this is an amazing country, honestly. It really is. It's an amazing country. Yes, I will do that. David Booty says, remind your lovely wife that all of Strata Nation loves her and is praying for her family and friends back in Russia. I tell her that every single day. Well, maybe not every single day, but I tell her frequently that the Stratosphere Lounge crew, I don't think I've ever done a show that hasn't asked about her since I met her. So yeah, let me see if I make sure I got that mostly. Yes, I think I've pretty much covered that. Hey, here's a famous truck driver, G.K. Masterson, who's probably riding from the road with a big, congratulations, G.K. Hey, Bill, with the success of Angel Studios and the Sound of Freedom, do you think it may be time to consider teaming up with them or trying to rattle up angel investors again to get your movie done? That is an excellent and a very important question, GK. Very, very important question. I really have. Well, hang on a second. Maybe I've just been paged. Maybe somebody was mentioned in dispatches. Hang on a second. Let me just see what this is here. I heard a little ding, a little ding-a-ling. Oh, wasn't that sweet? 3 happy smiley faces, 3 kisses, and 3 hearts. Ha ha ha. To you too, baby. Congratulations, you're a superstar. She's a great driver, by the way. She's just a terrific driver. Really excellent driver from the beginning. But many of her Russian friends, and Natasha too, have a real anxiety about the freeways. And I try to say they're safer than the surface streets. You don't have intersecting traffic, you don't have head-coming traffic. But if you didn't grow up with them, and it's inconceivable to me how you don't, but that's because I'm an American kid. But if you didn't grow up on freeways, then the idea of this many cars, especially in LA, moving that fast is really intimidating. It's like getting into, I imagine for not just for Russians, for anybody who grew up overseas or not in a car country, I imagine in fact, the Autobahns even are not even nearly this intimidating. I imagine that they look at this and they think it's like getting into a, level 5 rapids on a little inner tube. It's like, I'm going to get up there in the middle of all that stuff. It is intimidating, and it's certainly understandable, natural to be afraid of that kind of thing because it is so highly kinetic. But then again, I've been doing it for 50 years, 48, so really 50, and furthermore, that's just the amount of time I've been driving them. I've been on freeways since I was born. I was born in Manhattan. My dad, our first apartment, my dad lived in West New York, New Jersey. He lived right across the river. He lived easy walk from the dueling site of Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, although I didn't know that at the time. Found this really kind of dilapidated, it was a really pretty dilapidated brick building even in 59, 60, 61. And I went and looked for it and found it, I think, when I was there many years ago. But we used to go down the hill and look at the trains, and I remember that very well. And I remember the stone drinking fountains that they had in every little public parks on every little corner, little tiny little park with swing set, and I remember those public drinking fountains, not the ones that are made out of steel. In New York, they're made out of stone. They come out of the ground on a pedestal. So I have some fairly clear memories of being 1 or 2 or 3 years old. Fairly clear memories of that. But so I remember going through the Lincoln Tunnel frequently. So it's just something that we just did. That's what you did. You're sitting in the back of the station wagon, and you turn the corner, and then Dad puts his foot all the way down and puts the pedal to the metal, and that gigantic V8 engine on that Mercury 72 Mercury Marquis station wagon goes into full gear. It's probably getting 4 miles to the gallon around then, somewhere like that. And the steer, God, I remember that car. The suspension and the power steering were just so I can't describe it. It was like driving a hovercraft. I can't describe it. It's like driving a hovercraft. That's what it was like. You would. I'm not gonna watch Lodge. I made a mess of the last show, so I'll watch it later. Although if I don't catch this one, the next one's probably 2 days from now or something. You drive that Mercury Marquis station wagon, and it would just be doing this, just like this is the suspension, and then to turn the wheel, you want to make a lane change. It's just like just no sense of the road, no road feel at all, nothing. You're just driving a hovercraft at 100 miles an hour. My dad got that car up to 100 miles an hour just to see if he could, and I remembered that experience well enough to remember. I wasn't afraid of the speed, but I was definitely feeling like this is just. I don't think we have any control over this car at all. This just feels like we're just. Fortunately, we're on the Florida Turnpike, which meant that we only had 45 or 50 miles to worry about before our next 10-degree turn to the left. So that was that. All right, moving on. But thank you, GK. Great advice, and I really need to be focused. There's just so many things going on. Focus is my bane of my existence. Last one for the night from Jacob Belchick. Hail, Bill. You've spoken at some length about the degeneration of modern dating culture that contributes a lot to our current cultural program. And while I enormously appreciate your thoughts on the subject, I wonder about the perspective. Well, before you go any further, let me just say that I've tried to say that all of these dating comments and stuff that occurred to me before I met my beautiful wife are in Los Angeles and pretty much exclusively to Los Angeles. See where we go. You confront it as an existential problem with long-term consequences, but with all due respect, this is done as a man of a respectable age. In other words, a guy getting older. For young ones like me, it's a significantly more intense problem. Okay? On one side, I see a tremendous destruction of femininity writ large, which is not particularly surprising due to the enormous proportions of leftism in single women. On the other side, the masculine response to this is born from the so-called manosphere. Yes, I know the manosphere, which presents a bastardized version of masculinity that extracts all of the virtue, duty, and responsibility out of manhood, leaving only ambition, pride, and selfishness remaining. Amen to you, brother. Exactly right. This is the guys that smoke cigars in suspenders. Though I'm young, I've never seen any interaction between the sexes so badly mangled on a wide scale. Parenthetically, high rates of leftism in women correspond pretty closely to high rates of COVID vaccine uptake, all of with the potential long-term health and fertility side effects. True, too. My question then is pretty simple. If you were in the shoes of a 25-year-old conservative-minded, unvaxxed American male seeking a mate, asking for a friend, I promise. Yeah, there's a lot of that going around. And most of my questions asked, especially at the drugstore, like, am I just asking for a friend? How would you navigate the minefield you find yourself in? That's a great question. And this is, believe it or not, this is the kind of thing that, kind of question that I'd really, really, really like to answer as Mace Manningly. But we can choose to look at this in a negative way or a positive way. So let's go for the positive way. Jacob, you are you are extraordinarily in demand, and you may not realize how in demand you are. Regardless of what you look like or what kind of game you have, you are in demand. There are no, I have yet to see ever a social justice warrior or a feminist, meaning the most left-wing woman I have ever seen. I've never seen one of them ever say that they're attracted to these liberal men, these weak men, these men that are down with feminism, these men that stand up and talk about how women are being denigrated and they're just not going to stand for it. You know, the simps, the gamma males. They're not, I've never seen it, and they're not wired for it. They're just not, and that's just all there is to it. If you have some confidence, and you should have confidence because you're asking this question and you're not playing along. If you have confidence enough to just do this, because I keep an eye on this, right? If you see somebody you want to ask out, and you say, either, I wouldn't recommend texting, but if you call them and say, hey, listen, how would you like to go out on Tuesday night? I could take you to this place and so on, and then maybe we could either go to a nightclub or just ask for a date and be specific about where you're going to go and what you're going to do. And you are home free, my friend, because what I hear from young women all over the place is like they don't get asked out on dates. It's more of a kind of, hey, you know, I want to come over to Netflix and chill kind of thing. Hey, what's going on? Nothing. What's going on with you? Nothing. I'm not doing anything. Oh, yeah, really? Well, I'm kind of hanging out. I might play video games later. You know, just act, man. Just go in there and act. Take the initiative. And it's all over after that. It's all over. They just plain will fall down at your feet. More so today than ever, and it's always been true. J.B. Coulter says women love men who have a plan. Yes, they also love men who have their act together. They love men who know where their towel is, and that's really important. So it doesn't have to be a plan to go to an expensive place. It just has to be a plan, and you have to present that plan with the expectation that she's going to give you an enthusiastic yes. You can't be tentative about it. No, I don't suppose you want to go out with me. No, I don't. You know, hey, feel like going someplace? I have an idea. I've always wanted to go to this place. This seems like a great restaurant. Heard good things about it. How would you like to go on Thursday night? Make a time, make a date. If she can't make Thursday, she'll give you another day. In fact, I guarantee you, in this market, if you say Thursday and she has plans for Thursday, she will cancel those plans and you'll be going out on Thursday night. So you've just got to. I can relate to this because for certainly the first half of my life, I was just completely hopeless at this. I had zero self-esteem, zero. I was 6'1", 119 pounds at one point in college. I looked like a skeleton, and I knew it. I just couldn't stand the way I looked. It was just terrible. And my self-esteem was so bad that I recall with crystal clarity, I remember exactly where I was right at this second. I was riding with a friend of mine who had borrowed somebody's convertible. It was the University of Florida. We were on 13th Street, and we were right at the avenue there. We were stopped for the light. Top was down. I'm here with my friend, who was not a particularly good-looking guy. This car pulls up beside me with these two women. One of them leans forward and says, "You're really cute." And then the light changes, and off they go. And I turned to my friend Josh. I said, "Hey, Josh, I think that was for me." He said, "Yeah, I think it was for you too." I was blown away. I was amazed, just absolutely amazed. So you can gain that kind of confidence by just looking at data points. So that data point, because that's what it was for me, was like, well, I still think I look like a complete freak and nobody wants to talk with me, but there was that. And then, you get another couple and maybe this isn't so bad after all. I was telling Natasha the other morning, I said, honey, I think the biggest compliment I ever got prior to meeting you was when I was in my late 20s. This girl I was going out with said, you are cuter than socks on a rooster. And that's a data point I've carried with me for years, right? Just for years. Eric Blake says he's been called sweet by several women. That's a data point. Eric, I hate to break this to you, pal. You don't want to be called sweet. Sweet is not where you're going. If you're sweet, you're in trouble. You don't want to go for sweet. You want to go for strong, maybe. Sweet is sweet's just a you can't sweet your way into the back seat of a car, pal. You just can't sweet your way into the back seat of a car. It just doesn't happen. It never happens. And nerds who've had that entire life of expecting they could sweet their way into the back seat of a car, never happens. They go on and write movies about how in this particular case the sweet guy got the girl, and it's kind of the same kind of wish fulfillment as the Barbie thing, but it never happens ever. Ever. The nerd never gets the girl. Ever. So don't be the nerd. You can be much more attentive than, let's say, the stereotypical John Hughes jock. You can be more intelligent than them, certainly. You can be a better conversationalist, and you can certainly be funnier. Funny is a big weapon, man. Funny goes a long way. But the kind of funny you want, don't ever start off by making fun of yourself. You know? I'll tell you the perfect date joke. I came up with this on my own. But to me, this was perfect. And it just always was just exactly perfectly the right note that I wanted to hit. So I'm sending this out to the world and any of you young men out there who are looking for advice. Here's what I would do. You go out on a date, listen to what they're saying, don't talk too much, but on the other hand, don't agree with everything. Just don't. It's just bad. But this has been a real deal closer for me. So at the end of that first date, you got to play this exactly right. End of this first date, I kind of lean over the dinner table, not like real far, and just like, and then I start to get like I get real, like I'm about to get very maudlin, like I'm about to get sentimental. And whatever the woman is thinking of me at the time, she sees that look, and I say something like, "So listen, before we go, there's just something I wanted to tell you that's really important." And I can see it. There's the little antennas go, "Uh-oh, he's going to tell me he loves me, and he's going to tell me he wants to marry me," and it's like, ah. So you're actually trying to crank up that cringe. So I say, I just want to tell you something. What an incredible night, to be sitting here in a place like this beautiful place like this, and to be sitting across from somebody this good-looking, this sexy, this intelligent. I just wanted to say it's just got to be a real thrill for you, and I don't want you to feel like you need to thank me for it or anything. And that reversal is just like, it's that reversal. They are not ready for that. They have, pretty women especially have heard that kind of, "You're so beautiful, you're so wonderful, you're the most beautiful thing." They've heard it so many times. You just kind of put it out there like that. Here it comes again. I had a lot of respect for him, but no, here comes the simpy guy telling me how beautiful I am, and you just lay it right out there, and just at the last minute, oi, gotta be a real thrill for you. I get a laugh out of that every single time. I've actually modified that line on Mike Rowe's show. Just because it's a great line, it's a great joke, and it's perfect pitch. On the Mike Rowe show, I said, "Mike, just thanks for having me on, and I just want to say, that, just to be on the same show as a guy with, this kind of following, and he's got this kind of respect, and clearly a star and influence on the public, and just, not to mention just really good looking. It's just got to be a tremendous thrill for you, and I just don't want you to be intimidated by it, and let you know that I had a really good time, and I'm happy to come back anytime." It's fail-safe, because what that joke does is that's like a triple reversal joke. So the reason that's such a perfect line for a date, to end a date on, perfect line, is because number one, They think they're going to get something they don't want. And then they get something like, oh, I thought he was going to simp out. It's all about how confident he is. And then they realize that you know that you're joking, but you're having fun with yourself, but you're not putting yourself down. You know? Was I flirting with Micro? No, not really. Not in a gay way or anything. Just like a couple of Vikings, just like a couple of Vikings, just, going out and having drinks, taking a shower together, that kind of thing. Wow. Chris Elisar says, I dated the same girl for 3 years, and she never asked me anything about myself or my family. Chris, I don't want to pile on here, pal, but you dated that girl for 2 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks longer than you should have. In fact, by the second date, it should have been time to run. Well, you were on television. The guy who plays Bunny, by the way, Eric, look up the Fast Show and look up Ralph and Ted. It's the same guy who played Bunny on Harry and Paul. And Ralph and Ted is the most deep, moving, funny, heartfelt comedy sketches I've ever seen. Ever. And he is, the guy who plays Bunny is so bloody brilliant. He's so brilliant in that. J.B. Coulter says, I'm not going to chase you, which makes them want to be the pursuer. You just have to, it's like anything else. It's just really simple. You can't, you got to be different than everybody else. And if you're going out with some girl who's kind of hot or somebody you think is really cute, then chances are pretty good people have been kissing her butt since she can recall her name. And this is a big difference, though, so you got to make sure you understand this difference. You don't want to be insulting. You don't want to be rude. And you sure don't want to be a dick about it. But not kissing their butts has a magical effect. And in this day and age, the number of guys that know how to do that is rapidly approaching 0%. So, dude, just practice, just practice. What I mean by that is just go for it, man. And it's like Michael Jordan said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. I saw this, where did I mention this publicly? I think I mentioned it I think I put this in one of my Silent America essays. True story, and I'll close it with this. I was probably 18, 19, 20 years old, maybe somewhere around there. Yeah, 20, 21. I'd just gotten out of college, and I was back in Fort Lauderdale, and I was with some friends of mine, old friends of mine, and we went to one of these Fort Lauderdale high-end clubs. I used to work at a high-end club in Miami. I was doing lights and lasers at a club called Parallel Bar and Club Z and a bunch of these. In the mid-'80s, when Miami was really, really hot, I was working the nightclub scene there. But this was a couple years before that. And 3 of my friends went in there, and they met a 4th guy who was a friend of a friend. I'd never seen this guy before. And it was it wasn't like a strip club or anything, but it was real dark and lots of little tables. It was like a kind of a pickup bar, and there was a dance floor and all this stuff. And I'll never forget this, because across the room there was this cocktail table, and all of these tables had these little cones of light coming down, and sitting at this table was this blonde woman in this white dress, reminds me of Natasha actually, and she was just like a vision. She was just, it was just like, it just couldn't have been real. The whole thing was just unreal. Even at the time I thought this has got to be some kind of movie set because the lighting and everything. And she was sitting there by herself at this table and just sipping on a drink and not looking at anybody, not talking to anybody. And over the course of about 15 or 20 minutes, we sat there, the 4 of us sat there and watched, like, I don't know, 6 guys maybe walk up to her, couldn't hear what they were saying, just out of earshot. and then, turn around, walk of shame, going back, and everybody's looking at this going, well, I don't particularly need that kind of humiliation. Certainly I wasn't about to do it. I didn't have anything like that kind of nerve. But as this happened to 4, 5, 6 guys, something like that, this friend of a friend who I didn't know, you could see he was just getting more and more angry. And I thought he was getting, I didn't know what he was, but he was just getting more and more angry. And I think after the 5th or 6th guy, he said, all right, I've had enough of this. And he got up and he walked over to this girl. And he said this loud enough so that I could hear it. I'm sure most people in the bar heard it. He says, hey, how are you? You want to dance? And she said, no, I'm sorry. I'm not in the mood to dance. So here comes shoot down number 7. And this is what he said verbatim. I heard it with my own ears verbatim. He said, listen, princess, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Prince Charming threw a shoe on the way over. Prince Charming's horse threw a shoe on the way over here, so he's not going to be coming tonight. So do you want to dance or not? Because if not, I will go find somebody who does. Something almost exactly like that. And that was the end of that. And they were still dancing when the 3 other of us went home. He just plain, he didn't, he wasn't rude. He wasn't like, F you, you're going to, he's just like, he had a clever kind of line. Prince Charming's horse threw a shoe on the way over, so he's going to be a little bit late tonight. Something like that. And just right to her face, loud enough for everybody to hear it, not screaming loud, but loud enough so that she's kind of feeling kind of foolish now. Like, he's just like, what are you doing here? We all know that you're just sitting here as bait designed to shoot people down. This is the subtext of what he's saying. You're just here to enjoy shooting people down, and it's pissing me off. So you want to dance, or are you here just essentially to worship yourself? That essentially was a subtext of what he said. And Rough Ryan says, what a legend. It's like he was a legend. I've never met him since then, but by God, he's probably ruling the world by now, behind the scenes. So he is, I just never forgot that, because this woman was 10 plus. She was perfect. She was unbelievable. Miami in the early 80s, mid 80s especially, could generate that kind of person. And she was just absolutely top shelf in terms of looks. I'm sure personality was miserable. But I'm also sure that this guy didn't much care about that. It just offended him. I don't think he had any interest in it at first, because I think he could have read her much better than I did, and just thought, what a pain. This is just a complete pain. But the more guys that walked over there and just got shot down in flames, I think he just he said, I've had enough of this. He just got up angry, walked over there, and just bam. And I never forgot it. Never forgot it. So that kind of thing is really important. And the nice thing, looking back on it, and thinking about it some more as I've gotten a little older, I realized the beautiful thing about that was, even if she had said no, he's coming out of that one the winner. You know what I mean? He said it loud enough so that he basically called her bluff in front of the entire bar. And now if she's going to stick to her guns, oh, I don't feel like dancing. No, I'm just here. I'm not even waiting for a friend. I'm just sitting here until he just basically called her out on it. And even if she said no, he would have just walked away in such a way that's like, I don't have time to waste on this lunatic. What a man. Good for him. I know my wife was watching this, so it's not like there's any, particularly gruesome details or anything that I'm going to go into, but I will say this last piece of advice for you here, pal. Over the course of my up and down emotional state over the course of my life, Jacob, there have been times when I have taken the shot and times when I did not take the shot. And I have never taken the shot and regretted it. But many times I have not taken the shot and regretted it. I've never once, ever once, taken the shot and been disappointed. Not one time, ever. So that should tell you something. Just be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. You can be nice, but you got to be nice in a way that's like, he's nice because there's nobody shooting up the place. I get the feeling if somebody coming through the store guns blazing, he wouldn't be nice at all. That's what you're really looking for. I think that's kind of where you want to be. quiet, confident, but forceful, you know. I saw something once recently online. It might have been in the Manosphere thing. I saw something where this guy was going out with one of these modern women. These modern women are really scary. I don't mean scary like they scare me. It's just they're scared for the future. And so he said, "What would you like?" And she said, "Well, I would like the lobster." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm going to have the steak and so on." And so the food came, and then she said, "Oh, I want," and she's just, you know, eating half of his stuff. And he didn't let her get away with it. You know, he just said, "Hey, I don't mind you having a taste or anything, but if you wanted what I'm having, then you should have ordered that." Now, you got to be careful with this. I mean, it's not like the first thing he said out of his gate. If somebody says, "Can I try that?" Of course, you know, you don't be a jerk about it. But she was just, you know, she was just plain doing it. And he just said, hey, no, 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 no. She'd never been told no before in her life ever. And she was just like shocked. What? I say, "No." What? It's getting to the point where it's no longer fun or interesting. It's actually just now completely neurotic. But honestly, you say no to somebody today, and they'll never ever stop thinking about you. You know, they'll never stop thinking about you if you tell them no, ever. The thing that concerns me now is that I notice that women tend to be much sleazier than men. Not only sleazier than they used to be, sleazier than men. That they're really enjoying this whole slut thing, you know, that they think it's really cool. And it's not. They are in for rough life ahead of them, these girls that are out there. I'm just going to go on a summer bitch's girlfriend. We're just going to have a little summer bitch action. Me and three of my friends, we're going to go down to Fort Lauderdale. We're going to sleep with as many guys as we can. And it's like, oh, won't that be liberating? No, not so much. You're gonna find eventually going to find a guy who you're actually interested in, and then he's going to find out that you're 21 years old and you've slept with 45 guys, and he's out there. He's gone. And that's not something you can undo. Rough Ryan says, Art of the Deal says, who can afford to say no has the power. Correct. If you can't walk away from a deal, then you are going to get buggered. And CP Tome says, there's no virtue in being helpless. Yeah. And this is advice I've heard women give women, and I think this is 100% true. I've heard women say to other women, if you go out on a date with a guy, don't pay attention to how he treats you. Pay attention to how he treats the waiters and the busboys. And I think that's absolutely right. You know, be polite to everybody. Polite but firm. You know, there you go. All right, well, I think that'll do it. I'm going to close the show by thanking members at BillWhittle.com. I'm going to run the animation again, too, because I feel like it. Yeah. So, nevertheless, go for it, man. You are a commodity. Just remember, Jacob, that all of the women are looking for strong men, and all of the left-wingers out there are left-wing men think that they can sweep their way or right on their way into the affections of these chicks, and it just never happens that way. And I will end this topic with a quote from P.J. O'Rourke, who turned me into a conservative, and he turned me into a conservative with quotes like this. I love this quote. He said, now that I'm a right winger, sometimes women will accuse me of being a Nazi, but that never bothers me, because there's not a woman on the face of the earth that has ever fantasized about being ravished by a man dressed like a liberal. There's a lot of truth in that statement. Never ever fantasize about being ravaged by a man dressed like a liberal. Okay, off you go, young dudes, and don't take any grief, and don't disgrace yourself for the rest of the gang. All right, here we go. So thank you again for the members at Whittle.com who make this show possible, and all the rest of the stuff that we do, and all the fun that we have here and stuff. It's all due to them, and we're very grateful. And if you're not a member, this would be a good time. So I'm going to cut to the animation, and I'm going to watch it again, and then we'll see where we are by next Monday. But I was working real hard to have something finally ready to show by tonight, and so thanks for putting up with a late start. Okay, so that'll do it. We're going to go to we'll just go directly to the thing. Okay, and then after that we're going to title card. Then we're going to stop the stream. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you Thursday on the Stratosphere Lounge. Meanwhile, enjoy this while you can.
Well, today we're very proud and pleased to have a chance to speak with the four men that astonished the entire world just a few weeks ago with the official confirmation of Project Horizon and everything that entails. Gentlemen, you may not be fully aware of this, but right now you are likely the four most talked about men in the world, and yet we know nothing about you. Now, we know you're pressed for time, so let's just jump right into it. Major Mattingly, I understand you're in command up there. Can you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. My name is Robert James Mattingly Jr., and I'm a major in the United States Air Force.
Well, I've never heard anybody refer to you as Robert or Bob or...
Yes, sir, Major Bob.
Everybody refers to you as Mace. Is that some kind of nickname?
Actually, it's my tactical call sign.
Would you mind telling us how you got it?
While I was doing a routine RCS test in a rocket zipper that'd be the NF-104 Starfighter, I was leveled about 35,000 feet, just under Mach 2. I lit the AR-2, and just as I was about to start the pitch-up maneuver, it exploded.
Your airplane exploded?
No, just the rocket engine. Took the entire vertical stabilizer with it, though, and since the 104 is a T-tail, the elevators departed as well, so I had to punch out just a tick over Mach 2. Anyway, when I got back to Edwards, the first thing the flight surgeon says to me is, "So what's it like to eject at Mach 2? And I said, it was like getting hit in the face with a big frickin' mace. You're sitting there in air-conditioned comfort, and the next instant, you're looking at 1,500 miles an hour of airspeed, so yeah, it hurt. Anyway, the name stuck, so that's me.
Wow. Well, that's quite a story. Now, Grim, is it?
Yes, ma'am. Unofficially, obviously.
Can you tell us about yourself?
Well, ma'am, yes, I can. My name is Stephen Christopher Sinclair, and I'm a Command Sergeant Major in the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
And how did you get the name Grim?
Ma'am, Command Sergeant Major is not a commonly seen rank, and we have a significant amount of authority for enlisted personnel anyway. So the ranks sometimes say that running into an actual CSM is like bumping into the Grim Reaper.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
All right. And next we have...
Yes, hello. My name is Jeffrey T. Gordon, and the T is for Thomas. And I'm on extended assignment from Naval Reactors, or to be more precise, I'm a graduate of the United States Navy's Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, which of course lies under the regulatory umbrella of the National Nuclear Security Administration. I hold the rank of Commander in the United States Navy, and my military occupational specialty is nuclear engineering.
Wow, that sounds very impressive.
Thank you. I think so too. Now, of course, there's a lot of study involved, and you never really stop learning, so it keeps me on my toes.
Wonderful. And finally...
Sorry to interrupt. Gordo is not a call sign or anything. It's just kind of a nickname the guys gave me. It, doesn't really mean anything.
Well, thank you, Gordo. And finally, we have this very tall gentleman.
I'm not sure gentleman's exactly the term we're looking for here.
Well, thank you, Bob. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, I'm very well, thank you for asking. And you?
I am spectacular. Thanks for asking.
So, what can you tell us about yourself, Doug?
Well, What would you like to know?
Okay, well, why don't you start with the basics then?
Well, all right, I can do that. Douglas Elliott Davenport, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, and my tactical call sign is Sparks.
Yeah, just don't call him Sparky.
No, he's right. Don't ever, ever call him Sparky.
You know, if you guys want to finish for me here, I've got an ice cold hams waiting for me in the fridge. Honestly, it's like living among jackals up here sometimes.
Behave yourself. You're on national television.
We're not on national television, Grimms. There's no such thing as national television anymore. We're on the goddamn internet.
So, Doug, I understand that you're a pilot.
Well, I am when there's no skill required, yes, ma'am.
No, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What if you have to do something that does require a lot of skill?
Well, in a case like that, then I would have to revert to being a naval aviator.
Okay, here we go.
There's a difference?
Hell yes, there's a difference. A pilot has to stop a highly streamlined supersonic aircraft within, let's say, 8,000 feet of runway. That's not easy. Naval aviators, on the other hand, we have to do it within about 150 feet, which means between the 50-yard line and the end zone. So that's less than 2% of the available runway that old ham hands over there needs if he's having a really good day and is right on the ball. So let me see here. 8,000 feet versus 150 feet. That means if my math is correct, and it is correct, then a naval aviator would be 53.33333 times better at flying an aircraft than your typical Hun-driving chair force puke.
You're going to have to excuse him, ma'am. Sparks is the kind of guy who puts on his flight suit to go to McDonald's, so he's kind of, all ate up about this kind of thing.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Well played, sir.
Well, that escalated quickly. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there is your exclusive first interview with Project Horizon's Major Mace Mattingly and the last men on the moon. Well,